All right, well, how about it? You want to get into it?
I am. Who we got on tonight?
So we have, I've known our next guest since the late 90s. 1998, during festival in Ohio, I had the pleasure of meeting our next guest. She is a very dynamic martial artist, a phenomenal human being, and an author. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tori Eldridge, all the way from California in another time zone. Hi, Tori.
That's right. It's still sunny over here.
Yeah, you get, well, when is it not sunny in California? Yeah. Even when the sun goes down, it's sunny in California, Tori. You know that.
That's right.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm all excited. I'm totally wired and have been because my book drops tomorrow. So I've got all this stuff going on. It's crazy.
Yeah,
so this
that's
is
right. So
the second edition, or the second in the Lily Wong series. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and what we can look forward to tomorrow?
Sure thing. It's right here. Yay! So the actual book is even prettier than this because it wraps around red and has all this cool stuff like this one did in the back. But this is what's called an advanced reader copy. So, you know, they save a little money and just give you the white stuff on the back. So, but it's
industry
fun,
secrets.
I know, right? Isn't that fun? So, you know, the series, for those of you who may not know, is about a Chinese Norwegian modern day ninja in Los Angeles. You know, another one of those.
Sure.
Yeah.
She's 25 and she's got, you know, Joy Luck Club family issues, and she's a really unusual character. And she is a modern day ninja. You know, she was a lifelong practitioner of martial arts, started in wushu, you know, because that's a Chinese art, and then met a sensei when she was 12, saw him in the park tossing, you know, training partners like confetti, and begged him to teach her. And she had to keep it on the sly because she knew her Hong Konger mother would like not approve of some strange middle-aged Japanese man in the park teaching her 12-year-old stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, good call on that. So, you know, the ninja daughter was like this really exciting thing and this mystery, and it ended with this, you know, sex traffickers and this big exciting ending that I won't tell you about in case you haven't read it. The Ninja's Blade takes place 4 weeks after that. And so
okay, well, can I freeze you there before you
Yes.
get into book 2, which drops tomorrow with the Ninja's Blade?
Yes.
Let's rewind.
Okay.
Before the explanation of the book, before the intriguing insight on how publishers make their books and leave off certain colors so they could save on cash, before Lily even became a thought in your mind, let's talk about Tori. And give us a little bit of background on you. Where did you grow up and what have you, okay, so I know you and I know things that you've done in the past as far as a career is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us what led you to martial arts and what were you doing to earn a living? So let's learn a little bit about you and maybe we'll get some insight on how Lily came to be.
All righty. Okay. So I was born and raised in Honolulu. My mom's Hawaiian Chinese. My dad's from North Dakota, Norwegian. And I started out my career path as an actress, singer, dancer on Broadway, television, and film. And then I wrote some screenplays, and then I had these 2 kids, and I put my eldest son in karate. I put him in Tang Soo Do. And by that time I had retired from dance, or so I thought. Every now and again, somebody would call me on the phone and say, hey, do this television series, do this movie. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. So that was kind of fun. You know, the Final Fantasy, the motion capture for that came out of a phone call that was like,
yeah, let's pause. Let's talk about that for just a brief moment because
There's
that was such a
here.
great movie. Yeah, there is a lot. You're blazing through it like somebody's just like, what'd you do today? I went to the park. I played on the jungle gym. I went and got on the swing for a couple of minutes. I ran around and, you know, threw some sandbags over here. But I mean, you're talking to it like it's nothing. This is kind of a big deal.
oh, okay.
You being an entertainer, Broadway, dance, writing screenplays, you know, bits and pieces, roles and movies and television shows. What stands out to me, because this was shortly after you and I met, I think you had just done all the motion capture for one of the lead characters in Final Fantasy. And if
The
you haven't
lead
seen this
character,
movie,
yeah.
Final Fantasy, yes. So if you haven't seen this movie, Final Fantasy, yet, tell us about that and how that came to be. Because I was in theaters watching the movie after you'd spoken about it, and it kind of slipped my mind. But I'm watching it, and I was like, man, she moves like Tori. And I'm like, wait a second. Wait a second. This is Tori animated. And all of a sudden, the movie took a totally different meaning for me, because it's like you're watching this character play out and all their motions and the nuance and how they move. And I'm like, Tori, oh, that's Tori. Oh, that's something Tori would do. That's straight up Tori. So tell us how you were able to land that particular role.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Okay, so a friend of mine was doing voiceovers for that and had been cast as one of the motion capture actors. And apparently they were having trouble with the women that they kept hiring to do the motion capture for the lead. And I could see why. They were looking at the wrong skills, completely the wrong skills. So I got a phone call that said, hey, can we fly you to Honolulu to take this meeting? So I went, yeah, sure. So they flew me to Honolulu, and I basically explained to them the skills that they needed to make this happen. Because understand that this is way back in the day. We were the first ones to do this. This was innovative. This was before the Lord of the Rings. This was before Polar Express. We were the first ones, and it was, I think, 98% motion captured. And at that time, we call it performance capture. We hadn't quite figured out how to do the face. They were experimenting on us, but they didn't quite have that, but all of the body. And it was really, really interesting because I also did voiceover work, and you have to lip sync, the lines and everything. But this was kind of like body syncing. We would get the sides, we'd have to memorize it, we'd have to act it in time with our pre-recorded voice. And so that was really interesting. And we were in a studio covered with ping pong balls and black unitards, and surrounded by these lights. And our set was like see-through. It was just, a pole here and, wood there and whatever, because the lights had to be able to hit all the ping pong balls. And we would just do the thing. And here's the thing that was really interesting. I didn't just do Aki Ross, who was, the star of the show. I did the supporting role of Jane. And
wow.
Of course, I had to give them completely different body movements. So one of the tricks that I did was I asked for Reebok shoes for Jane, and I asked for shoes with a slight heel for Aki, so that I could change the placement of my weight and the manner in which I kind of moved around. So yeah, that was interesting.
Very cool. A little taijutsu and acting there. I love it. So that was a great, it truly was. And again, if you have an opportunity to, make sure you try to get your eyes on a copy of this movie and watch it. And now you will see a little bit of the background information, and you'll see our good friend Tori performing in that movie. So, okay, so now we move into your son is taking Tang Soo, which is, to me, is kind of amazing because there's so much history. Like Anshu studied Tang Soo. Our friends who own Newberry Park Martial Arts Center, they all study Tang Soo. What is it with the Western hemisphere of the United States and this fascination with Tang Soo, and how did that transition into To-Shin?
Yeah, I think the fascination is that it uses hands and feet, because Taekwondo is only foot oriented, it's all kicks. But Tang Soo, you've got all that work and everything. And so I think that's the great fascination. And, of course, I was sitting on the bench. I was one of those moms sitting on the bench watching the thing. Yeah, I was totally that. And like I said, I had, retired from dance. So I was kind of a gym rat doing, aerobics classes and weights and stuff. But I'm watching this stuff going, I could do that. I could do that. So I finally got off my butt and I said, I want to take a class. So my teacher kind of knew a little bit about me. So my first day, it was a small class. It was like maybe 10 people. It was everything from brand spanking new me up to, one step below a black belt. So the whole gambit in 10 of us. And so first day he turns to me and he goes, you know the first form, don't you? And I went, yeah. And he goes, can you perform it here solo for us? I went, yeah, sure. So I did that. He goes, you know the second form, don't you? And I went, mm-hmm. Can you perform that for us solo? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then we went through all these target things. He went through every single kick. I was doing jump spinning heel kicks my first class. We did fight patterns across the floor with hands and feet. We did sparring my first day, and I had a helmet, and I was told that I couldn't hit anybody in the head. This is after my teacher, who was like 6'2", said, can you do a round kick to my head, but don't hit me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he goes, can you do a double round kick to my head? And I'm like, well, what does that look like? And he goes, and I'm like, yeah, well, sure. So I did that. And he goes, okay, so we're going to spar, but you're not allowed to make contact with anybody in the head. Is that clear? And I said, yes, but everybody else was allowed to hit me. So my first day, as you can imagine, a couple of the students wanted to kind of make their presence clear.
Sure.
So I got hit in the head quite a bit. And then there was this one green belt fella who really just came on strong. And it was the most amazing experience because I felt like I was drowning. The shots they just came from everywhere, hands and feet. And me and my, 30 minutes of experience trying to stay safe and deal with this was like, well, what the heck? And then he stopped and I was like, wow, that was amazing. So I was hooked.
Very cool.
So how did you go from Tongsudo to To-Shin-Do?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of had this meteoric rise. So probably after about 9 months, I switched dojos and I started training with Master Roger Lacombe, who incidentally also was a teacher for Bill Poet, who was the teacher for the whole California crowd. So, it's a whole community. But I would say, about maybe 7 or 8 months after I had started, I started teaching. And so I started co-teaching and then I started taking over. So I got to this first degree red belt very soon. And then I sat there and I wasn't allowed to test for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, so I was on staff. I mean, I was attending staff meetings, a year and a half into my training. So I needed to stay connected. And my teacher had just discovered Anshu Hayes, and he had 2 different dojos, and he wanted one of them to turn into a To-Shin-Do dojo. So I said, hey, you probably want to know what that's like from a student point of view. How about I train in that and I let you know how it goes? And because it was related to my teacher, the fellow who was the head of our whole federation said, I'll allow that. And so while I was teaching in Tongsudo, I was training in To-Shin-Do. And I ended up getting my black belts in both within a couple months of each other.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. And then I had to stop teaching in Tongsudo because, what can I say? I just kept teaching them ninja stuff. I mean, how could I not? It was so much, it was so great.
You
cool.
rose all the way to a 5th degree. You earned the warrior name Myotoshi. Could you tell folks listening what Myotoshi translates to?
Oh, that was so special. Oh my goodness. I remember sitting at festival in the audience and listening to this, and I wish I had recorded it, but it means warrior of the unfathomable blade. And I went, wow, that's quite a name. And Anshu went on to say that it had to do with the depth of my seeking and the depth of my understanding. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And who knows, maybe I was just confusing. I don't know. I was totally unfathomable. I don't know. I'm sure it had a lot of meanings.
I think there's at least a double meaning to every one of them. Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, there has to be. Well, that, I mean, as fast as you told that story, that is a very interesting, combination of going from Punk Sudo to, To-Shin Do and kind of migrating over to the To-Shin Do art. What to you were the biggest differences between Punk Sudo and To-Shin Do?
Well, definitely the taijutsu, and in Tongsudo things are very abrupt. They're very abrupt, they're very angular, they're very percussive, and I had to really let that go. And it helped being a dancer. One of the last Broadway musical that I left was Cats. It was the original first national company of Cats. So I was a pretty accomplished dancer, and I would like to say that doing that increased my physical vocabulary. So there really wasn't, my body had moved in probably every way that a body could move. It was just a question of in what order and to what purpose, right? And so I had to look at To-Shin Do in a different way. And that took a little doing. So that was kind of interesting. Some of the similarities, some of the things that I brought with me were really very helpful. For instance, having fought, I used to do private training sessions, with this Tongsudo friend of mine who at the time was a 4th degree black belt and a couple decades younger than me. And we used to do kickboxing, sessions because we could train the way you couldn't train in a class, right? It was okay. We could, heel kicking each other in the head and we'd forgive each other. And so it was really great. And then I did a lot of ground fighting because we had some of our teachers were really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I got a lot of ground fighting. And then we had the amazing Bob Burbage, who was part of the Chuck Norris fighting team when he was still a red belt, giving private, boxing lessons. And so, while I was, waiting it out for, my time to come so that I could actually test, these are the things that I was working on. So I was like gaining all that kind of skill. So when I stepped on the mat with To-Shin Do, I had that grit. I already understood what it was to fight and get hit and all those barriers that a lot of people have to break through when they first start. I was already very comfortable on the ground, and I've been meditating since I was 12. And so all of those things really helped. So a little of both.